$28 trillion in debt. Whose fault is it? Republicans, Democrats? The answer is yes. Yes on both fronts.
So hello everyone and welcome to our third of our series in the Convention of States. We are covering the Balanced Budget Amendment today. Before I get started, I wanted to just say thank you to all of our YouTube viewers for hanging in there with us. We have not put any new content on YouTube in some 3 weeks now, 2 of which we were suspended for. We did win the appeal, but that didn't happen until the 2 weeks had already passed. So, and then we just haven't posted anywhere in the last week because we've just been tied up with our own careers and our own families. So here we are with the third piece of this COS series. We want to discuss balanced budget amendments. I just want to talk about it a little bit in the sense of what it is and what you might hear that would be against it. Now, you may think to yourself organically, like, who could be against the balanced budget? Like, who could be against not spending more money than you take in when there's no, significant emergency in play? So in the end, what the argument is against this, you're going to hear this from your senators, and it's important that you understand how things have been working for the last God knows how many decades. The federal government has pretty much worked its way into the states to the point where it can threaten states to do what it wants them to do in just about any instance because it just simply threatens to pull money away. And the states have sold their souls from a political standpoint, most of them anyway, to where they're so dependent on the federal government, they've forgotten how to stand on their own 2 feet. They've forgotten how to be independent. And for the majority of these states, they would be so worried about losing this federal money that they're really willing to do anything and give up in their entire concept of their sovereignty. They're willing to give it away so that they don't have to be the one who's on the hook and has to explain to the American people why this is no longer here or why that's no longer here. But it's important to understand, okay, that, well, first of all, it's important for the American people to grow the hell up. So everybody's mad about the crazy spending until it's something that you want from the federal government. Like, none of that money are you entitled, not a penny of it are you entitled to. Not a penny of the federal tax revenue. None of it. It's not Social Security, that's different. People are paying into that. That system needs to be heavily overhauled because it's already bankrupt. But that's not, and I mean funded in a different way. I don't mean thrown away. So in the end, though, when it comes down to it, the way that our government spends our money is incredibly irresponsible. Now, I have a list off that's coming up in a little bit from Rand Paul, where he went on a wonderful rant in Congress, where he lists off these bizarre spending that goes on. So for the people who are out there and are just like, what, you don't want the government to spend money? Well, good luck driving on roads. Which I would say there would be roads anyway. There absolutely would. The private sector always responds, always, 100% of the time. But even if we do depend on the government for roads would be something that we would want them to do. But that's not where this money's going. No. This money's going on things like chickens doing cocaine. You're going to see in a minute. All right. So, but in the end, you're going to have these state legislatures telling you, oh, but this much of our budget comes from the federal government. This much of our... You need to shut them down right there. So if you're calling out to your legislator, as we're asking you to do, and they start giving you that kind of nonsense, you go ahead and shut that down immediately. You want to know how to shut it down? You just respond to them and say, really? So 40% of our state budget is dependent on the federal government, and you're running the show while this is happening? So this chaos happened under your watch? So what you're telling us is that we're complete slaves to our federal government, and you've thrown away every concept of the way this country is supposed to operate. You've sold our state sovereignty. See how they respond to that. They're not going to be ready for that. Because when they make that argument on the floor, nobody hits them that way. They all just sit there and go, ooh, yeah, that's a big percentage of the budget that's coming from the feds. We got to be careful here. No, you don't have to be careful here. An adult needs to be in the room. Okay? These are not even things that everyone should just be in agreement. This is not a left, right, Democrat, Republican, none of that nonsense. All Democrats and Republicans that are in there now, almost every single one of them, there are a handful of exceptions that come through from time to time. But for the most part, all of them are just two wings of the same bird. They've been spending our money, pissing away our money, have no respect for it whatsoever. None. And then when inflation hits and and our money becomes worth less and less and less until it's worthless, then they walk around and go, man, I can't believe this happened. And they start pointing fingers at each other. When meanwhile, the entire time it was both of them. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that we spend our money on that both Republicans and Democrats have funded over the course of time.
We actually borrow more in a month than we used to borrow in a year. In March of this year, we borrowed $660 billion in 1 month. $28 trillion in debt. Whose fault is it? Republicans, Democrats? The answer is yes. Yes on both fronts. So what we end up with is a $28 trillion debt. If you want to study cocaine and you want to study Japanese quail using cocaine and you want to know if they're more sexually promiscuous, they're being voted on by people who are selected by the people doing the studies. You know, $500,000 spent studying Panamanian frogs. They want to know whether or not the mating call of the country frogs in Panama is different than the mating calls of the city frogs. We've now discovered that the NIH was funding the Wuhan lab. So we should have oversight on what happens. But after 50 years of abuse at the National Science Foundation, we're still studying, will people eat ants to combat climate change? If someone in the buffet line, when you're going through the buffet or Luby's cafeteria, and someone in front of you sneezes on the food, are you more or less likely to eat the food? $2 million. And hearing Neil Armstrong say, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, or did he say, one small step for a man? The National Science Foundation got $700,000 of autism money to study one word, the preposition a. And you know what their conclusion was in the end? We just don't know. This is lizards on the treadmill. So we spent, $1.5 million studying lizards on a treadmill. We bring in about $3 trillion in revenue, and we spend about $4 trillion. While we would borrow money from China to send kids in Pakistan to space camp in Alabama or to Dollywood, $250,000. We also spent over $1 million in Afghanistan doing an anti-drug program, $90 million on a hotel in Kabul. The hotel was never built. They need another $250,000 to destroy what's left of the hotel. The list goes on and on and on. The frustration of the American people is, why does it never change?
So there you have it, folks. Okay? And believe me, that wasn't the entirety of the nonsensical projects that get spent, that our money gets pissed away on. Okay? Just know that your elected officials have gone on the floors of our Congress and have petitioned for these things. Or worse yet, they've slipped these things on the back end of bills where no one's going to pay attention to it, and it'll be a bill that was serious, like something to fund veterans hospitals or something to take care of our vets, etc. And then they slip this kind of junk, chickens doing cocaine and hotels in Kabul, and all of a sudden someone catches it, votes against it because they don't want to. So someone does have a moral red light that goes off, and then what happens? They bash that person for not wanting to help veterans. This is the kind of nonsense that truly, it is childish. But we put an amendment in the Constitution that says you cannot spend until you have a plan for a balanced budget. That year has to have a balanced budget. So you know what you're going to take in, you know what you can spend. Anything you spend above that is illegal. Period. People need to start taking self-responsibility, and the states in particular need to take self-responsibility. No more of this hanging, we'll pull your funding if you don't do what we want. Is that really how you want to live? Do you even know that you're living that way? Because that's how it works. That's how states have already surrendered their sovereignty. So if your congressman is yapping about any one of these amendments, but this one for this argument, if he's sitting there telling you, well, we're really dependent on the federal government, well, you tell him to get on that, because that's not your problem, that's their problem. It's only your problem because they suck. They need to know that. And if they don't make a change, if they don't start changing the way that they treat the federal government, the way that they treat, if they don't stop salivating every time one of these federal congressmen dangles some money over their head, primary him. Primary him. All right, so check out our website, www.thepatriotthinktank.com/COS for Convention of States. You will learn a ton there. There are links to the actual organization, Convention of States website. Stay tuned, guys. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to our Rumble channel. Anything that we talk about with COVID for at least the next 3 months is going to be put on our Rumble channel. So we're generally not going to put those things here. I don't have the other 2 episodes in this series up on YouTube yet. I might put episode 1 here. Episode 2 is staying on Rumble and Facebook because of I don't understand the COVID policy that YouTube has, and it's incredibly ambiguous. So we're just not playing with it. But that being said, you could check that out on our Rumble channel and our Facebook page and our MeWe page. So if you're on any of those platforms, even if you're not, get on them and subscribe. So that being said, get to our website, sign the petition for COS. You need to go ahead and get active. This is where we take a stand. This is it. For those people who are out there and are mad and wondering how we're going to do this, what are we going to do? I hear everyone talking, but nobody's taking action. Well, we're taking action. And we're using our own Constitution to legally overthrow the power of the federal government. And if they get out of line, we get this through. They get out of line again, we do it again. We just keep doing it until it gets to the point where they can't do anything but run the military. If that's how irresponsible they get, then so be it. Right now, we're not that drastic. Right now, we're just trying to get common sense measures through. So get to the websites, get active. There's no excuse at this point, no excuse. We could be in convention by next summer if all the resolutions that are on the desk this upcoming year, get passed. So if it's in your state and you let them put it on the shelf again for another year like they did last year, all these propositions came up later, they pushed them all to the shelf. It's our job to get them off the shelf. It's our job to light the fire. That's where the fire comes from, us, the boss. Rant over.
And like that,